Welcome to Formula One Espresso News. I'm Terry, and this is, of course, Coffee Corner Motorsport, Four Beans a podcast. You've got me for the next 30 minutes where I'm going to be bringing you all of the latest from the paddock to the podcast via my shed whilst drinking far too much coffee. And what have I got in store for you this week? We've got Max and his Red Bull future, of course. We've got the pecking order at McLaren, and has that changed after last weekend? We've got woes at Sauber, we've got Williams' FIA frustrations, and we've also got the disappearance of Dan Fallows from Aston Martin before, of course, we finish with a look forward to Jeddah and a quick guide to what's going on for this weekend with the last of the triple headers, of course, coming right up. So if all of that takes your fancy, do me one quick favour. Please hit that like, follow, subscribe button, whatever it is available to you on the platform you're listening to, and let's get into it. This is Formula One Espresso News. So, welcome to this week's show. Like I said, the first thing we're going to be looking at is, of course, Max Verstappen and his Red Bull future. There is a huge amount of speculation circulating about this, obviously coupled with some news of George Russell potentially getting a new Mercedes contract, and add all of this into the pot. And we just need to talk about what it is that's going on with Red Bull and how they seem to have gone from being in a dominant position with the new regulations to being in complete disarray currently, is what it sounds like. Now, this all comes on the back of reports from the pit with regards to the previous Grand Prix in Bahrain, where Max Verstappen's manager was having a heated argument with 𝐿𝐼 about Red Bull and their performance. Now, for those who, of course, remember the Grand Prix, it was an abysmal performance for Max Verstappen. There was slow pit stops with regards to lights. There was also frustrations with regards to just the car not working. And that hard tyre just disappeared off a cliff when it come to fold when it was put onto that Red Bull. And the RB21 just does not look like it's making progress. It doesn't look like it's making moves forward. Now, I know that Red Bull are holding on to this new regulation change that's coming in Barcelona. Christian Horner has been talking about saying, well, actually, let's wait till we get to Barcelona, wait till the new regulations come in with regards to flexi front wings. We've not had flexi front wings on our car, so therefore we feel pretty confident that once this rule is introduced, we're going to be getting back towards the front of the pack. Max Verstappen doesn't seem to share that confidence. He's been very openly critical of what that car's doing. And if you look at the impromptu meeting that was held after the Bahraini Grand Prix, after, of course, those comments from Max Verstappen's manager, which had 𝐵𝐼, it had Helmut Marko, it had Christian Horner, it had also other senior members of Red Bull. It was very much a crisis meeting over what's going forward. Now, yes, there was double points, so Yuki Tsunoda obviously got in the points for the first time for Red Bull, scoring double points, but that Red Bull, like I say, did not look anywhere near challenging in terms of the Grand Prix win. It was just nowhere. Now, yes, we had that win in Japan, but is that a blip? Did it just suit the car? Was it just one of those things that actually everything come together and Red Bull were able to get what they wanted out of the car to extract performance? Or is it more of an underlying problem? I think all this goes back to Adrian Newey. I think it goes all the way back to Adrian leaving. Now, we know that after Miami last year, Adrian had zero involvement with the Formula One car and with, of course, the Formula One team. He started his gardening leave on the RB17 project, and then obviously off he went into the sunset to obviously join Aston Martin. Now, at the time, there was a lot of talk about, will they miss Adrian? Is it really that big a loss? Is it really that much of an issue? Because ultimately, he's not been working on the Formula One car. He's been doing the Red Bull car project. So will he, will his input be missed? I think it's safe to say yes is the answer to that one. You've only got to look at what's currently happening with regards to Red Bull and their development. Now, I don't believe that Adrian was fundamentally developing the Formula One car, far from it. But I think that having that experience on site, having that person in the meeting, having that knowledge to fall back on, having that person to go to when something goes wrong, which is what Pierre Wache and the technical team were no doubt doing, by taking that out of the mix, there's a massive gaping hole. You add into that the people who have left, you look at into that, the people who have gone to, obviously, you've got McLaren when they lost Rob Marshall. Fundamentally, they lost Rob Marshall to McLaren. McLaren introduced an upgrade some 5-6 months later, and lo and behold, McLaren at the front of the Formula One pack currently at the moment. Coincidence? No such thing as a coincidence in Formula One. I think that's another key figure they lost, didn't replace. They've now got Jonathan Wheatley gone. Now, don't get me wrong, the pit stops were not down to Jonathan Wheatley leaving at the weekend. However, the gremlins that crept into that, is that a sign of, trying to job share? We've heard a lot of this with Red Bull, with other people covering everyone else, promoting from within, and actually people not being ready, not doing the same sort of checks that Jonathan's team may have done with Jonathan heading it. We don't know. We don't know what goes into these checks. It could have just been a gremlin. We know that obviously George Russell had problems as well. So it could just be that's what it is. And it's just one of those races you just have to put down to there was an issue and move on from it. They're talking about it being a transponder signal. They're talking about it being a signaling error. What we don't know is, was that defined by Red Bull, defined by the FIA? So was it a problem with the setup? Was it a problem that is going to hinder them going into obviously this week's Grand Prix with, of course, the same kit being transported down? That's a concern for Red Bull for sure. And would Jonathan Wheatley let that happen? I think it's coincidental that since Jonathan's been on gardening leave, Red Bull are no longer the fastest at pit stops. And is that underlying actually that these people leaving? Yes, they can be replaced. Yes, Christian's been very open and honest, saying, of course, we can replace them. We've got people ready to step up. But are they up to the same standard currently? And that's the big debate. I don't think they are. Is Pierre Wache up to Adrian Newey's standard? No, I don't think he is. Could he be? Well, yes, he could be, but he's not there yet. So ultimately, they're filling gaps with people who are not quite up to the same level as the people who maybe have moved on. And I think that's showing with Red Bull. And the pressure showing is mounting. It's starting to look on all of the teams. Max Verstappen come out and said very openly, I'm out of the championship. Helmut and Christian said, no, he's not. But what does all this mean for his future ultimately? We know that Max Verstappen has a contract all the way up until the end of 2028. It's a long-term contract. It was signed a while ago. It's a very lucrative contract, but it does have clauses in it. It does have performance releases. It does have get-outs in it, deliberately put in there by Max's camp to aid him if he wanted to make a change should circumstances exactly like these happen. Now, we're hearing those circumstances relate to the championship. So what we're saying is below third place seems to be the trigger point for that exit for Max Verstappen. Now, there's some talk that's a summer break rule. There's some talk it's an end of season rule. We don't actually know, to be truthful. Most contracts have either or in, or maybe even both. So it could be that if you're below third at the summer point, you can trigger that clause, but you can't leave until the end of the season, for example. So there might be a bit of that in there as well, where the halfway point will give him the opportunity to trigger that release, but he still has to finish off the season before that release is activated. Now, realistically, Max Verstappen isn't going to make a move at the halfway point of the Formula 1 season. He's going to see the season out. But that does leave and beg the question, what next for Max Verstappen? For me, there's three options. There's Max goes and retires and goes off to do something else. So retires from Formula 1, which is a very feasible option. We know he's not a fan of the big calendar. We know he's not a fan of the travelling. He's already admitted that he's not, that enjoyable with regards to the media and all the stuff that goes with it. So that is one option. He's got a lot of outside interest. We know the Verstappen.com team has just started out and about with regards to GT3 racing and things like that. GT racing, and things like that. So we know that there are options for Max Verstappen to move away and try his hand at something else. He's certainly young enough to go into another series or something he will want to do. And that is, of course, a feasible option. If he stays within Formula 1, there's likely to be two destinations, which is, of course, Aston Martin and Mercedes. Now, with regards to Aston Martin, the Aston Martin package would obviously see him reunited with Honda, and we'll see him reunited with Adrian Newey. And of course, financially, will be the biggest contract in Formula 1 history. Now, there's been talks of up to £1 billion. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. A lot of it will be performance clauses, add-ons, share options. So it won't be a base salary of that. Could it be projecting up to that? Absolutely. Let's be honest about it. Lawrence is not afraid to throw money at it. Who can he replace? Either driver is an option for me, because Fernando's at the end of his career, very much going to do an ambassador role for Aston Martin. They're now going into other series, so Aston Martin could slide Fernando into that if they wanted to. They could do, of course, the same for Lance. Lance is obviously there because of who his father is, fundamentally. Whatever we think of his driving ability, whatever we think of how good we are, ultimately his future is tied in with what his dad thinks. And if his dad wants him to move out the way for Max Verstappen, I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem. Do I think that a Fernando and Max partnership would work? I don't, which does make me think that Fernando would be the driver to take an early retirement and then go off into it. With regards to Max coming, though, yes, Adrian's there. Adrian is focusing on the 2026 car. There looks like there's no sort of interest in the 2025 car at the moment. He's firmly on 2026. We'll cover a bit more on Aston Martin with the Dan Fallow's disappearance at the end as well. So you've got that element of it, that he will be teamed up with them. He'll be teamed back up with Honda, who obviously he's had a big success for years with, and the rule will be good. The difference with that is Honda may not have the engine to cope with the new regulations. A lot of the people from Honda went to Red Bull powertrain, so they've almost got a new new sort of camp in place with regards to the 2026 regs. They are slightly behind. They didn't start developing until later. They've expressed concerns about it. Is that enough to put Max off is a big question. Now, when you come on to reliability and dominance, everyone's talking about the Mercedes engine. So Mercedes may not be financially on the same level as Aston Martin, but they will be financially on the same level as Red Bull, so what he's currently earning, if not slightly better. They obviously aren't paying that mega contract for Lewis anymore, and that allows them to then put that money into Max and bring him in. With regards to who would replace, my thoughts are fundamentally it would be George Russell. Now that kind of goes against what we're hearing with George Russell's new contract. I did a video on this one, so I'm not going to delve too much into it. We're not seeing anything from Mercedes to say they've signed George a new contract. It's very much a speculative story saying he's on the verge of it. I believe negotiations have happened. I believe it's something that's a plan B for Toto if he can't get Max. I just think that he would not be signing George Russell until he's had the definite no from Max. So if he is signing George Russell in the next couple of weeks, that's because Max's camp has already said, absolutely not, we're not coming to this season. I believe that if Toto had his way, he would have a Max and Kimi partnership. Max being only in the sport for a few more years, as we've just discussed, and Kimi being a young up-and-coming rookie who reminds Toto very much of a Max Verstappen he lost out on. So I can't, for 1 minute, feel that he's going to let Kimi go and go off and do something else after he's already expressed the regret he has over, of course, losing Max Verstappen to Red Bull. So my fundamental thought is, if there's still an option to get Max, he will keep George waiting. George hasn't got that many options outside of Mercedes, especially in terms of a top team. So therefore, it makes sense to just keep him waiting, keep him going, and keep it happening until that point. And that is where I can see it. You know, which one is it going to be is a massive debate. I honestly don't know. It depends on what Max decides to do. Like I say, retirement is one option, but ultimately, if he stays in Formula One, money will be Aston Martin, a competitive car that could be dominant. You're probably looking at Mercedes. So it's quite mouthwashing to see what he does. Or does he repay Red Bull's loyalty and stay with Red Bull, knowing that Ford's coming on board and actually give them the season? A lot of talk to say that he might give it one more season. He might give them 2026 and see where the land lies at the end of it. That is, of course, an option to Max and, of course, Red Bull. Red Bull are not going to force Max out in any way whatsoever. So Max knows that any decision made is fundamentally his decision, isn't it? But it is quite startling to see this unraveling that's happened right in front of our eyes, from what was the most dominant Formula One car and the most dominant Formula One team to now being completely off the pace, out of the championship, and potentially out of Red Bull. That just sounds crazy when you think about it. Max Verstappen out of Red Bull. Who'd have thought it? Right. That brings us nicely on to McLaren's pecking order. Now, we all know that Oscar Piastri put in an absolutely amazing performance at the last Grand Prix. Led from start to finish pretty much. Commanding performance, even with safety car. Still finished like 10, 14 seconds ahead of everyone else. 30 consecutive races in the points for Oscar Piastri. And the whole point of this segment is, has this changed the pecking order in McLaren, or are we seeing it change in front of our very eyes? We know that Lando is the favoured number one, more experienced driver. We've known this from the past. But McLaren have also been very open and honest about saying that actually, whilst they're both in the championship hunt, they will let both of them race and let both of them potentially be the team leader. They haven't got a team leader, so they will move it about and they will let one of them do it. Now, I've said before that this just causes problems. We've never seen two number one drivers being successful in Formula One. Yes, it's great for the Constructors' Championship. It's not great for the team, for the Drivers' Championship, because ultimately you take points off each other. And that will allow someone else to potentially sneak in, someone like a George Russell who's picking up podiums in the background. That allows them to sneak into it and actually allows them to be part of a title challenge which you didn't really want them to be part of. Whereas if you prioritize one driver, you'd find that one driver stormed into the lead and off they went. We know that Oscar's got a new contract. We know that in that contract there's a number one status in there, which says that there is no number one status in essence. We know that Mark Webber's put it on there. So from what we can see from it, Oscar Piastri can't be asked to play the reserve number two driver until he's physically out of the championship running. Now that is really key here, because as it stands, if he beats Lando in Saudi Arabia, I'm pretty sure that Oscar will then leap above Lando in terms of the championship, which, yes, it wouldn't put him in number one status, but it would make it very awkward for McLaren if there was a switch that was needed coming up over the next few weeks, based on performance, based on form, based on what's going on. Now, Lando, he's his worst critic, isn't he? He's been open, honest about his struggles, saying that it's not quite the fastest car, whereas Oscar said it is the fastest car. Lando feels like he's overdriving it. If I'm honest, he feels like he's thinking about it too much. Reminds me a bit of what happened with Sergio Perez. Not obviously as disastrous in terms of points, but just that thinking too much about driving it. It doesn't feel like it's natural to him at the moment in terms of the current setup of the McLaren. And I think Oscar's just eased into it a lot more. He's showing that pace. He's showing that ability. He's showing what we've all said. Now, I said a few years back, I think that Oscar is the future for McLaren. I even said at the time that I think that he could be ahead of Lando. Once he learned racecraft, once he learned all those bits that go with being a Formula 1 driver, so tyre wear, how to control a race, how to manage to Delta, all those things that a rookie has to learn in Formula 1. Oscar's now in his third season, where he knows that now. He knows what it takes to win. Yeah, this is win number 4 for him. He knows he can deliver. He knows he can win. And also he knows what he's doing fundamentally. And that spells trouble with Lando. Unless Lando can find a run of form to get back ahead of Oscar, Oscar's going to run away with this season potentially in terms of the McLaren partnership and put himself in that number 1 status. And with the way the contracts worked, they're not going to be able to ask Oscar to back away once he's in the lead. Mark Webber's made sure that he's made some shrewd moves on that one. So I really want to see this dynamic play out. I think they've definitely got the strongest car. They've got the strongest partnership on the grid. And I'm not counting Lando out at all. Don't get me wrong. I think he's had some unlucky experiences this season. I think he's been a bit hard on himself. I think that there is a massive expectation that's been put on Lando by the public, by the media, for him to deliver a world championship. And whether or not Oscar's allowed to sort of creep back in on the back of that he's not had that same pressure, and that's how he's done it, I'm not too sure. But either way, it's exciting times if you're a fan watching this unfold, because we all remember back to the Mercedes days of Rosberg and Hamilton, and it kind of feels we may be about to get the same here between the two papaya boys, because it's getting spicy between those two. Because, like I say, I'm not going to see Oscar. If we have a situation this weekend where Lando's behind Oscar and they want Oscar to move aside, I can't see him doing it, if I'm honest. I don't think they'd ask it, but even so, can you see him doing it? I certainly can't. Sauber's woes. Oh, where do we start? So, the reason I put this one on here is if you look at the storylines for the weekend, you've obviously got Nico Hülkenberg was disqualified for plank wear. Interestingly, that's what the 4th disqualification this year. More than what we've ever had in the start to a season. So fundamentally, the teams are either pushing something called the FIA found a new way to measure, and the teams may have been getting away with it and certainly aren't anymore. But either way you got to look at it, we are seeing a lot of disqualifications from the teams this season compared to most seasons. So Nico Hülkenberg, plank wear, was disqualified at the weekend. But what got me, and the reason I put Sauber's woes in, if you listen to Bortoleto and you listen to Hülkenberg before even the race and even after the race, they talked about how pretty much that Sauber is undrivable. They talked about the chassis, how it just doesn't do anything no matter what they do to it, how poor it is, how much they're behind in the development curve, how they're not enjoying driving it. Now, bear in mind, Hülkenberg had a really successful season last year at Haas. Obviously came to Sauber on the back of the fact it's going to be Audi next year. I keep saying I think that Audi are holding back. They don't want Sauber to do well. They don't want this season with 𝐃𝐿 FM, whatever we want to call it, F1 team. And they don't want them to do well. They want to wait till those rings on the car, till that liver's on there before they are successful. And it kind of feels like they're waiting for that. It kind of feels like they're holding back, and they're bringing themselves into that point where they're like, actually, we're going to wait until 2026. We're going to invest heavily into 2026. Obviously, we talked about Jonathan Wheatley. He's now arrived with Sauber, so that makes some changes, hopefully, to the team and what they're going to deliver, certainly going forward. Binotto's obviously there in the background, but it kind of feels like there's no progress. James Key's there at the moment. He's got to feel under threat, especially with likes of Dan Fallows, who we're going to come on to, wandering around the paddock without a job. That's going to put him under pressure, that's for sure, because ultimately, design falls with him, and that car's not performing. And it's a case of, will Audi have the same confidence in that car, knowing what's happened with the current Sauber and knowing exactly how the current level of performance is, because it's nowhere near good enough. Obviously, the drivers are on multi-year contracts, so they're not at risk for next season. But you kind of now feel sad for Joe and Bottas, because they never had the car last season. And actually, did they deserve to lose their place? I don't think they did, to be honest. So, yeah, for me, it's a startling sign of what's going on at Sauber. Like I say, they've got big problems. The fact they turned around about the plank and they said, we don't know how it happened. We had no inkling towards it. We had no evidence towards it. We had nothing to say that actually there was a problem with FP1, FP2 in terms of the setup. That's kind of more worrying. At least the likes of Ferrari said, you know what, actually, we know there was a problem. we know there was a problem with the setup, and we knew it was touch and go. So when you put all those factors into it, you kind of go, Sauber feel like they're in a whole heap of trouble, to be honest. Let me know your thoughts on Sauber. I'd be interested to know. Williams FIA frustrations. Where do you start with this one? Obviously, we got the picture of Carlos Sainz, but you got to go back to qualifying and Alex Albon. So Alex Albon qualified, Nico Hülkenberg qualified ahead of him, got his lap time deleted some 45 minutes later after taking part in Q2. Obviously, with that deletion, it would have meant that Alex Albon had the chance to compete in Q2 and potentially go into Q3. We know that obviously Carlos got into Q3, qualified his best performance for Williams of the season. So Williams definitely had a competitive car. Yes, I've seen a lot of comments saying that Albon should have been in that position, but ultimately they had traffic, they had issues. So that it was kind of a problem for them that maybe wasn't their own doing. I know they should have banked the lap. I know they should have been clear into Q2 already. I get those comments, but also you got to understand, fundamentally, they did do enough to get into Q2, but the FIA robbed them this. Now, the FIA made a statement on Saturday night. They said that turn 11 wasn't a problem beforehand, whereas turn 11 became a problem in qualifying, and therefore they didn't have the right equipment set up there, and it only became a problem later on, and that's why the track deletion was so late. My question to that is, why haven't we got this sort of technology at every corner? Now, the FIA and Formula One between them need to find a way with the new Concord agreement to make sure there's enough money to do these things. Professional stewards, this goes to highlight it as we come on to stewards as well with regards to frustrations. But for me, professional stewards, equipment, these are fundamental parts of Formula One. There's enough money, there's billions floating around in Formula One. We need to get this right. So if we can't get this right via what we've currently got, let's make sure that in the next Concord agreement, which is about to be signed, there's enough money ring fenced and put aside to make sure that this going forward isn't an issue. We should have the technology on every corner that we can. We shouldn't be saying, well, actually, we only brought 4 with us and they're on the wrong corners. That's not good enough. And the whole point of this Geneva Centre was set up so that actually we would be quicker at track limits, and that was on the back of what happened in Austria a few years back. So the whole point is this central centre in Geneva would pick up on these things. Clearly they didn't. Clearly there's problems with it. With regards to Carlos Sainz, obviously we then had the issue with the race itself. Yuki Tsunoda, snowballed into the side of him, took off half his side pod. Carlos got a penalty. Yuki didn't, much to Carlos's annoyance. Carlos then served the penalty. Then we all sat there afterwards and saw an FIA statement saying that he hadn't actually served the penalty. They've gone back and checked. He did serve the penalty. Loads of people were saying it online. People commented on my post going, yeah, but he served the penalty. I was like, I know, but I'm only going on what the actual decision is, which says he's got a grid penalty because he didn't serve the penalty. Subsequently, that got rescinded, and then later on, the new one got released. What it boiled down to was the automated system didn't tell the stewards that the penalty had been served, so therefore it told them there was an outstanding penalty, and then they obviously just issued the grid penalty because that's what you would do. That's what the FIA are telling us. My next question is, how do we miss a penalty being served? Because ultimately that's what we've done, and everyone kind of brushed off that fact. Everyone's gone, oh, well, it's okay, and we missed the penalty. Well, yeah, hello, we missed the penalty that was being served that nobody in the steward's office actually picked up on. That's monumental. That's massive. What if that was a race? What if that was during a Grand Prix and they made someone stop for an even longer pit stop, or they made someone come back in, or they added it on at the end of a race and messed with the classified order? All these things come into play. We shouldn't be missing penalties. We got a centre in Geneva, and we've got stewards on the ground. There's absolutely no reason for stewards to be missing this. I'll keep going back to professional stewards. Professional stewards who we look into their performance, we make sure they're doing what they're doing. We put them into a position where we can hold them to account, we can review them, we can do all these bits. That's what Formula One needs. And like I keep saying, if the FIA are adamant they can't afford it, then let's make sure in the Concord agreement that some of this money that's floated around, be it entry money, prize money, whatever it looks like, a proportion of that goes to giving us professional stewards who can come out and talk to the media. I'm sick and tired of seeing the FIA just release a document with a press release going, oh, we're sorry, we got that wrong. Carlos took his shit and got fined, 10,000 euros or whatever it was, and he was 5 seconds late. There was absolutely nothing on there to say there was any sort of mitigated circumstances, even though the poor bloke said he had a doctor's note and verified by a doctor. They just went, there's a fine. Yeah, we're supposed to sit here and go, oh, it's all right to get a lap time deleted 45 minutes later. It's okay to miss a penalty in a race, but that's okay because we're terribly sorry. I'm sure Carlos was sorry for taking his shit while the national anthem was about to play. What was his choices? Go on the grid and do one, or stay in the toilet and finish off, and then run down to the actual opening ceremony as such for the race. Now, Carlos was shown absolutely no leniency from the FIA. Yet as fans, we're supposed to give the FIA leniency back. It works both ways. It's a two-way process, so they've got to kind of earn that. So I really get Williams' frustration with this. They feel hard done by. Carlos over the past couple of weeks obviously feels really hard done by. And yeah, maybe they should just give him his money back for that fine as a token of goodwill. I'd certainly be asking for it if I was Carlos. And then the final bit of news we got before we round up, we're 25 minutes in, so we're flying as per usual, is Dan Fallow's disappearance. And the reason I put Dan Fallow's disappearance, because he has disappeared, literally. He was, of course, the technical director at Aston Martin. A lot of talk with 𝐵𝐸𝐾𝐒 coming from, obviously, Ferrari. That's been delayed due to the court case. Obviously, Adrian Newey is coming in as well. So we all assume that something would happen to Dan. But it seems like he's now leaving Aston Martin completely. He was moved to one side originally, was part of the plan for him. And according to his LinkedIn, LinkedIn's great for getting information because people update it without realising it, and suddenly you go, ooh, what's that? So Dan Fallows is now saying that he's no longer in Aston Martin's employment. Now, Aston Martin themselves have not given any statement on this. They've not talked about it in any way. It's not a surprise there were rumours that Adrian and Dan fell out with his time at Red Bull. So that's probably a sign of things to come. And obviously before Adrian came, Dan was moved to one side. No doubt on the back of what Adrian wanted as part of his deal to come to Aston Martin. So it's not a shock. It's not something that's kind of, a surprise to us. However, with someone who's designed the car, the AMR23, which of course got all in podiums for Fernando Alonso, it kind of feels like it's been a bit muted in terms of departure. So nothing talked about it. You would have thought that someone who's designed your most successful car in your short history in Formula One would have got a better send-off than changing his LinkedIn profile and changing it to, say, open to work. But yeah, Aston Martin don't seem to want to play with that one. With regards to destinations for Dan Fallows, Red Bull probably remain a likely candidate with what's going on. Obviously, Pierre Wache is going to be under pressure. Does Dan being now unemployed make up for that? So is that a sort of place he could go back to? Like I said, Sauber will be looking over their shoulder at what's going on. No doubt someone of Dan's experience and obviously showing with the AMR23, like I said, that he can produce a car. Actually, would he be better than 𝐃𝐎𝐒 on that front? So no doubt they'll be looking at that one as well. So there are options open for Dan Fallows. I would imagine there's some degree of gardening leave on it, but did he serve his gardening leave when he moved to one side is the big question for that one. Because like I said, when Adrian announced he was joining, we also saw that movement from Dan Fallows moving to one side. Was that the start of his gardening leave and that actually he's already been serving it, and that's why he's now left? He served it and then left. So that could have happened. He could have done that without us knowing by stepping to one side. Definitely a possibility, definitely a prospect that was what's happened. So yeah, Dan Fallows changed his LinkedIn profile to open to work, and the Formula One teams maybe who are looking for a technical guy might want to click on his profile and drop into his DMs. That's for sure. And that's pretty much it. I think we've got just time for a Jeddah preview. So obviously, like I say, round 5, the last one of it, the first triple header of the season. We've got 6.174 kilometers. We've got a race distance of 308.45 kilometers, 50 laps, 3 DRS zones, a lap record held by Lewis Hamilton in 2021, which is a 1 minute 30.734. Now, with regards to pit stops, a pit stop in Jeddah is about 20 seconds long. It's normally a 2 to 3 stops might be the optimum around here for this weekend. Pirelli have brought with them the C3, the C4 and the C5 compound tyres. There was only 17 overtakes last year in 2024 for the whole race, so don't expect it to be high. It's normally where you qualify, tends to be where you finish in Jeddah. And if you can, we all remember that lap in 2021 that never was with Max Verstappen absolutely flying. So, for me, it's not the most exciting race. I don't believe it's going to be this time round. The Alpine press release I had said there was a 100% chance for a safety car. I put a video up earlier. I don't believe in 100% chances in Formula One. So let's just say it's a high probability that we're going to see the safety car in action. And with regards to the weather itself, the weather is 30 degrees for pretty much all of the 3 days. It's dry. There's no chance of rain, hardly less than 5% on all days. So all in all, it should be, in terms of the weather and what we've got in store for us in Jeddah, not too bad. Whether or not it's going to be exciting remains to be seen. Like I said, with just those 17 overtakes, it doesn't fill you with much confidence that that's going to happen. Teams I expect to do well. I expect McLaren to be the team to be. I'm really intrigued to see how Ferrari do with their upgrades. They got about a 10th last time round, so they got a 10th on that. So I'm hoping that with that, they've made a step in the right direction with that new floor that got delivered. And if they've made the right steps, can they come into play? We know Mercedes have been doing quite well. George Russell's been sneaking up, like I said, nicking podiums. Their strategy last time out really sort of hindered Kimi Antonelli. So hopefully they can get a good strategy for Kimi, because that one this time was awful. Last time out in Bahrain, so hopefully that put him into play. George Russell's been driving well. Like I said, there may be speculation about his future, but in terms of what he's been doing really well. So I expect Mercedes being in the mix. I'm not too sure Red Bull are going to have enough to challenge those front runners, to be honest. I think we're going to see McLaren out front. Then I'm intrigued to see that Mercedes, Ferrari, which one's better in Jeddah. And then I think we're going to get Red Bull and then the best of the rest going down. In terms of teams that improve, we now got all 10 teams have got constructor points for the 2025 season. And we've also got, of course, the re-emergence of Haas with another set of double points. Really bad in pre-season testing. Looked really bad, for the opening race in Australia. I've actually turned it around immensely since then. Great drive from Ollie Behrman, P20 to P10 last time out as well. Really exciting time. So, yeah, for me, that midfield battle gives you, a lot to look forward to and a lot of hope that maybe the midfield itself will be in a position to be able to challenge and give some excitement. Whereas the top, I think that wherever they qualify might just be where they end up. And that is pretty much it, really. That's 30 minutes done. That is my Formula One Espresso news. Like I said before, if you haven't already, just do me a favour, hit that like, follow, subscribe button. In terms of me, I'll be back over on FanAmp on their YouTube channel for the Fantasy Formula, which will be, of course, this week, coming once again before the deadlines lock in. So check me out over on that one. Tech Corner will also be back. I'm not expecting a big one in terms of updates for the car. I think a lot of teams are waiting now for Imola Miami, so I'm not expecting a big Tech Corner at all. We saw some creep in. It was mainly Ferrari last time out. So I think they'd just be running with what they got, with it being the back of a triple header and the fact they've moved from Bahrain to obviously Saudi Arabia. So they took the same stuff with them and haven't been back to the factory. So I'm not expecting a lot of changes on the cars in terms of advancements and updates coming. And that's pretty much it, really. So a huge thank you for me once again for listening. And this is Formula One Espresso News. So like I say, thanks for listening. Enjoy this week and I'll see you all soon.